When you get to hear someone say, oh God, you don't know how long that used to take us 2 years ago, and now we can just get it done like that.
When we see our customers say, oh, that used to take 8 hours, now I'm doing this report in 15 minutes.
The AI space is advancing quickly.
You shouldn't give yourself the option to fall behind.
What do you feel like is the biggest lie that's being said in media at the moment around AI? Welcome to the Capably podcast, where we're exploring how AI is changing the way we work. In today's episode, we're talking about how AI is changing the media industry. I'm Fitzy from Capably. I have here today Tyler from Generation Media and Drew from the 7 Stars. Guys, thank you so much for coming along today. We're super excited to have you. I guess for the audience, maybe we can just do a quick intro so they know who you guys are.
I'm Tyler. I head up the digital team at Generation Media, a specialist independent agency in the kids, toys and family space. And I lead our AI and automation rollout at Generation. So I'm very much looking forward to today.
Thanks, Tyler. And Drew?
Thank you for having me. So I'm Drew. I work at the AV team at 7 Stars. We are the largest independent media agency in the country. And my sort of day-to-day involves TV buying, but also working across cinema and CTV, VOD, and working on the sort of deployment of inventory across all of those channels.
Perfect. Like I said, thanks again for coming along today. We're super excited to have you. There's a lot I would love to discuss. I guess so the best way to do it is probably to jump straight into it and be quite bold and throw a question out there. Maybe Tyler, you can start. What do you feel like is the biggest lie that's being said in media at the moment around AI?
Probably that it's not going to completely change our industry and the way we operate and the way we work. I think at the moment, the way AI is being integrated into our workflows is very much additive, but I think it's about changing how we look at it, less transactional, more transformational. So thinking about how we can redesign those workflows as opposed to replicating them.
100%. And then Drew?
Yeah, I completely agree. It's AI is not a tool rollout. It's a complete change of how you approach everything, because it impacts every stage of the process, from planning, activation, reporting, finance. You know, you've got to build it from the ground up and work through each team's individual needs and use the sort of inherent cohesion of your business to kind of drive the progress forward.
Yeah, 100%. Something that I've been seeing a lot lately is it seems like a lot of leaders still see AI as a nice to have rather than a must have. And it's crazy from the Capably perspective, because we are seeing the impact and the return on investment and the efficiency gains that companies are having by trying to integrate AI into their workflows. And when I see them still see it as a nice to have, I really do feel like, they are going to fall behind. I guess when it comes to integrating AI into media companies, do you feel like it really is not just about gaining new efficiencies, but being able to provide new services as well? Or do you guys still very much see it as, let's automate, become more efficient through back office tasks?
I think we're an outcomes-based industry, and I think everything that we do is tied back to how we can do more and be more effective in delivering our clients' campaigns and their overall sales. So I think ultimately what we're trying to do will stay the same. It's just how do we get to that outcome that will change.
Yeah, we're still a very people-focused industry. We're dealing with sort of mass psychology. So it's not so much about AI taking over, it's about filling in the gaps and reinforcing the structures that we've already sort of got in place.
Definitely. Yeah, I do feel like there's, I'm not sure if you guys feel the same, but it definitely feels like there's still a bit of nervousness around AI, whether it's going to replace our jobs or is it here to help? Overall, what's your guys' feeling within the teams that you guys are working with day to day? Is it quite something that like people are excited about, or is this more something where people are still a bit scared of the unknown?
There's a definite fear of the unknown, but equally, I don't think people know, what AI can do for them at the moment in terms of helping them and how it can change these things. As I said, I think people are thinking of it in terms of replicating existing processes and workflows. So at the moment, the areas we're focused on are purely based on helping those people through doing their job better, reducing errors. And in doing that, I think there's a lot of positivity around it. What I would say though is there's a lack of kind of understanding at the moment, and as I said, the way people are looking at it is very transactional. What it can do to improve their individual jobs and roles. So I think you'll find in a lot of these agencies, everybody's used ChatGPT or Claude or one of the big models and companies, but really the focus is on what can it do for the individual in helping them rewrite an email or analyze some data, and not collectively looking at how do we improve the processes overall.
Yeah, I think from an agency side, it's very much we're all looking in that direction. Clients, I've found that they're very much either in or they're out.
Okay.
There are plenty of clients who are so on board with AI and trying to improve their efficiencies and test out new things. And then on the flip side, you've got clients who perhaps they don't want their data being used in such a way, like one of the real sort of strengths that we can use AI for is merging the information that we get from sales houses and suppliers and overlaying that versus the client data, like sales data. But if a client's not willing to do that, then it's going to be somewhat limiting to the overall goal.
Yeah, and that is a valid point. And then, do you feel like you have to expose that to your clients, let them know that you are using AI to help with reporting and so on? Is that something that do you feel like you have to let them know, or is that something more that's just like the internal operations of the 7 stars, and that's just how you guys are working, and effectively you're just trying to get that job done quicker and more efficient? So, do you feel like that's something that you typically like to feel like you have to expose to clients, or?
No, it's not something that we ever feel like we need to explain. When we're selling in new products, we'll always champion the power of AI and how that works and how it's going to improve their competitiveness as a business. But we're looking at outputs, and so long as what we're producing is of a high standard, then and we've QA'd whatever AI has put out, then we're more than happy to just deliver.
That's a great point. On the QA, I guess we have the same belief at Capably, where AI is fantastic, but if it's going to be something that's going to be delivered or it's going to be client facing, should definitely be always checked over,
Yeah.
keep that human in the loop. I suppose for the 7 stars in Generation Media, that's definitely a must, keeping the human in the loop
Yeah.
at any
Yeah,
process
100%.
that AI touches, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think what we found is that AI is very good at sort of middle to middle. It's only as good as the input and the data and the context that we put in, but we also know there's a lot that needs to be done in the outputs to still get it to something that we'd be happy with and that we can share with clients. And there's a lot of QA processes that are put in place to make sure everything is checked thoroughly, and the AI systems that we're using are not completely autonomous.
Absolutely. Sort of nothing gets past a step without getting checked quite thoroughly. We'll be looking certainly from an AV side. We're dealing with a very complicated data set on the Barb API. It's this ridiculous behemoth, which produces something like 1 million cells of data for every 3 minutes of like TV. So when we're looking at what comes in from that, we need to make sure that every sort of TVR is aligned to what we would be seeing in our sort of traditional processes, just to make sure that the accuracy of what we present to the client is ideal.
Let's say there's a process that you guys want to integrate AI, and let's say it's a reporting process like AV reporting or campaign reporting, something like that. Do you feel like it's almost better for, we'll get into structural changes in a second, but do you feel like it's almost better for adoption if your team or the users know that they're still at the center of the control when running that AI workflow?
Yeah, 100%. I think we're still sort of early in the sort of AI expansion across media, and I think people want to be able to have confidence in what they're sharing. I think, and also this data is still data we're making decisions off of, so we need to be confident in that, and the best way to get that is human verified. So we want to be checking everything that goes in and checking everything that comes out.
Yeah, I also think it's probably quite key from almost the sort of a morale standpoint. People want to feel involved with the change that's being driven. And if it's just a tool that comes from the top down and suddenly someone's got to change the entire way they work in order to fit this new business KPI, there's a lot more a lot less appreciation for the tools. It kind of generates a degree of disdain towards them. And one of the key things about AI product rollout is it needs to be a pretty comprehensive uptake, because any sort of break in that chain, any team that's not picking it up that quickly, it breaks an entire workflow and then ultimately the output.
Yeah, that 100%. Because even what we're trying to do at Capably here is, you can see that there's a lot of tools out there, and they're quite out of the box, and it's not. We're finding that with AI, it's not one shoe fits all, and especially if you really want adoption on board, you want people to get in and use that AI workflow. It's really important that you understand how they're currently doing that role and doing that task, and then mapping out how they can get from A to B quicker. And also, I know, Tyler, from some of our conversations, that, like you've said, sometimes the way they're working now doesn't mean we're going to automate it that way. Now that we've got an AI engine, potentially there's another way to do it with still the same output. So do you find that
we've been sort of off the back of those conversations, I think they've been really useful for us to look at it in this completely different way and think of the sort of end product first, the outcome first, and think, how do we get there? How do we re-look at this and approach it in a way that is completely different, and in doing that we're restructuring our data, how we're storing or where we're storing it, or naming conventions, or everything is then built to streamline that process, reduce the sort of manual input on the way, to reduce those manual errors we're seeing, speed up the efficiencies, and then ultimately deliver the same or better results.
Yeah. No, and that's a great way to look at it as well. Definitely starting from looking at what's the outcome you want to achieve, and then almost reverse engineering it to figure out how can we get there quicker. So yeah, love that. I guess I don't like to, in a space that's more innovation and tech, like to speak about failures, because I always just feel like there's something you can learn from trying new things. It doesn't have to be AI or in the current companies you guys are at, but are there any times where you guys have tried to implement some piece of tech, maybe it's been AI or previously some sort of type of innovation into a company, and it just failed to scale? And then potentially just why you think that failed to scale as well. So maybe I'll throw it back to you, Tyler.
Failed lots of times, actually. But I think most recently, I think that we've been onboarding a lot of new tech and tools and systems to improve the way we operate and our clients' businesses. And in doing that, we've gone with a couple of challenges. I think the sort of fundamental challenge across all of those projects has been adoption. Actually, how do we get people using these tools? How do we show the value of it? And ultimately, what we found is bringing people on the journey was key to that. So that's the sort of training and development at the beginning. That is the discovery sessions, understanding what they're doing and how we can solve their problems.
And then Drew, I guess to you as well, has there been any type of, or maybe if you didn't introduce it yourself into the company, but there's something that's been brought onto you, saying your team are now going to be using this piece of tech that you just felt like didn't land or scale within your team in the past?
So we've done some work with you guys, and I'm not going to say it's a failure by any means. It was just an initial hiccup. And it usually comes from, quite frankly, the client expectations, because they're always very, very different. So we would like to produce something that's client facing, and there's a certain way that I have done things, and I present it to my clients, and I can do it across a couple of them, and it usually all sort of fits together. But when you're dealing with, say, a car brand that's trying to build awareness over multiple years so that you're their front of mind when someone goes to buy a car for the first time in 5 to 10 years, they've obviously got completely different expectations to a food delivery service, which is trying to get you to buy a couple of takeaways a month. Likewise, a client that spends a couple of 100,000 is going to have completely different expectations from a client that spends 20 million a year. So when we were looking to build our quality report generator, we found that I could build it in such a way that fits to the clients that I know and I understand. But as we start to roll it out, it moves to other teams who look at this and say, no, we can't have this information presented in this way. We need to have it in this certain way. And that was, I'd say, yeah, the first sort of like hiccups is trying to, one, come up with some sort of unilateral thought process that will allow us to produce what the clients desire. But then we've also, we're an independent media agency and we pride ourselves on our dynamism when it comes to campaigns, and our ability to service those clients. So we had to try and find ways to align certain metrics, but also keep that customizable sort of aspect for the client.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then I feel like, so when you say, that maybe the client's expecting some type of output and you're trying to automate that process, let's say it was a report that was going out, and you're trying to automate that process, but the client wants a certain type of report. Do you feel like, because you're integrating AI into that workflow, that you almost need to standardize that process and have a report that always gets generated in the same template and format? Or, because, doing some work with you guys, we do have some very simpler templates for your client, but does it feel like there has to be some sort of mesh between trying to standardize a process before you automate it? Or do you feel like it's possible to standardize the process as you're trying to integrate AI and automate that workflow?
There certainly has to be a core consistent aspect to each of it. So it's not terrible in TV, because we know that we're always talking in TVRs and we don't have a lot of other things to sort of consider, like click-through rates and stuff, because you're viewing on a television. So like compared to some of the other channels, it can be easier to standardize.
To Drew's point, you do need to be flexible along the way. I think, again, it's looking at those outputs. What is it that we want to be delivering at the end of that process? And it might look different, but how do we then automate that to give people the sort of flexibility to get to those different end outputs without changing the underlying sort of structure and the foundation of the process? So yeah, I think it's a balance.
So when you guys are looking at automating a workflow, let's say it was within your AV team, how do you guys decide who is going to be the owner of the AI workflow? Because as you know, there's a lot of back and forth to making sure that that AI workflow is relevant for the team and it's going to do something that's actually useful and valuable. So how do you guys decide who's going to be the owner or take ownership of building that process with Capably?
We very early on established an AI committee where we have leads from each of the team who want to have a sort of passion for these kind of things, which does help, and have the expertise within their area, their field. So those are the people that we have you guys speak to from a discovery point of view to understand what those processes look like. But when it comes down to the rollout, and setting up those processes, workflows and integrations, then we have somebody that can step in and lead on that process, with myself and a couple of the senior leadership team overlooking that to make sure that it does align with the rest of the business. Ideally, we'd like to standardize the sort of admin, the process side as much as possible, but it then does need to carry over into different teams and different departments sometimes. So having somebody oversee all of that can help, but having those specialists to kind of build it up, be on that journey and know that they're solving a problem for themselves.
100%. I can totally see that, especially because I guess when you guys are thinking at a company strategy level, there needs to be some type of direction and plan in place that you guys are following. So at what point do you guys feel like it's important to bring in the end user of the AI workflow? Is it from the get-go? So as soon as we're going to start work on this project, we're going to bring in the end users? Or is it very much 1 or 2 weeks, just try and map out what that department needs to automate, and then once we got a base, then we'll bring in the end users to like almost stress test it? So at what point do you feel like it's really valuable to bring in that user?
I think get them involved as early as possible. I think that's one of the learnings I had from failing, is that if you don't bring people on the journey, you don't get them involved as early as possible, and you don't bring them into it to be able to kind of make changes at its earliest stage. They might know things that we don't know. We've got particularly myself, whilst I head up the digital team, we're looking at workflows across our AV team, our planning team, our finance team, and in doing that, I'm not going to know exactly what they do and the full process end to end. So it's really important that they come in as early as possible.
Yeah, and Drew, I guess because you're normally on the end user point of view,
Yeah.
right? So like, how important do you feel like it is that you get involved in that process when you're getting told that, hey, we're going to bring in this new workflow for your team?
Yeah, as Tyler said, as early as possible. If you sort of just present a product to us and tell us that we've got to use it and we've got to be retrained on how to use it, and certainly if it doesn't fit in with what we need to produce, it's going to cause friction and the product may ultimately fail. I think the best thing that you could possibly do is get the end users in as soon as possible, because they're the ones who provide the insight as to how it works, and they'll provide the direction that ultimately puts it, or that ultimately creates the product that you're looking to produce.
It feels like there's a lot of POCs and sort of proof of concepts, pilots going on at the moment, and there's a bit of frustration as well because it seems like that AI is not delivering what everyone's expecting for it to deliver. So we've definitely found that get the user in, find out actually what they're doing, and then like how we can make their day-to-day time a lot more easier. Do you feel like there's much structural changes when implementing, like let's say we have an AI workflow that's now running and the team's now using it? Do you feel like there's much structural changes within the team on terms of like maybe less new hires or potentially job cuts? I know we spoke about that AI is there to help people, not replace people. But do you feel like there's much structural changes once you have a few AI workflows within a team running?
Yeah, I don't think currently in its current form there's a huge amount of structural change in terms of the people. As we said, there's still that human element that is needed. It obviously changes how they operate and what they're doing. I'd say there's probably more structural changes when it comes to, I said, the data and how we're getting the information into these platforms and tools, more than the people. What I would say is we do see it as an opportunity to improve our clients' business outcomes, improve margins for us, and save time across the teams to really focus on the things that really matter and can add value to our clients and the rest of our teams.
I wouldn't say it's going to cause any sort of major structural change. We work in a very, very fragmented, data-heavy industry, and that is an issue that only becomes more and more exacerbated as various, streaming platforms appear, and there are new data sets that have become available. And across all of that, the information that we have available to us is increasing. No one's going to lose any jobs or anything. It's just a matter of consolidating all of the information that we have and maintaining the skills for our people to produce, the output that we're looking for.
Yeah, 100%. And actually that kind of brings two questions to mind. So when we're speaking about that there's more and more platforms nowadays, there's two things. There's definitely more tools out there. It feels like everyone's got way too many tabs now with a whole different platforms doing a whole bunch of stuff. But I guess on the other hand, there's also, like I said, more streaming platforms now. So you got more social platforms and so on. So I guess it's kind of a twofold question. Maybe I'll throw the first question at you, Tyler. Do you feel like that having one platform or 1 hour platform across the company is much more valuable at this point in time? Or do you feel like each departments or teams can still do with separate AI platforms that are automating specific tasks for their jobs?
I think the ideal scenario would be having one platform. Unfortunately, that's probably not the reality at the moment. So I think we do have teams that have different tools, and within that, there's sort of embedded AI within some of the tools that they use. And so I think we'd love for that to be within one platform, but currently the capabilities aren't there. And sometimes it's the sort of the tech or the APIs that that they use that don't necessarily have the structure of the information, or sometimes the cost of having that integration is just not necessarily worth what we get out of it, and it's much easier just to dip in and out of what we've currently got. As I guess it scales across the industry, that might change and we might see that. But in its current form, I think it kind of it is a bit more fragmented, but we are trying to centralize as much as possible.
Yeah, and then do you feel like sometimes some departments suffer? So let's say that you've got one platform like the Capably platform that's designed to be across the organization. Say you're working with the planning team. Do you feel like that maybe HR or finance have to kind of wait until the planning team have got their AI workflows up and running? Or do you feel like, no, it's okay, we can work on two departments at once or multiple different workflows across teams?
I don't think we need to restrict it to the teams or go through, I guess, the the way we think about how we work is end to end. We start with a brief from a client. We get sign off. It goes through the build. It goes through optimizations. The campaign ends. We do an end of campaign report, PCAs, things like that. Goes to finance to be reconciled and paid for. I don't think we necessarily need to start and go from the beginning to the end to do that. I think we can. I think focus on the high impact areas, the areas we can make the most difference and add value as quick as possible, and that might sit in finance where maybe they're copying a load of invoice numbers from a PDF to a different platform, and that can be streamlined or automated, or it might be within HR where there's our company policies and people just want to go and ask questions, and rather than going to our HR department, they can just dip into the platform and say, what's our maternity policy? Get those answers quite quickly. Things like that. I think we can do alongside the stuff we're doing, maybe in the planning team or activation.
Yeah, because I guess especially for the AV team, Drew. So I guess maybe in agencies it's not so simple as terms of like it's separate where finance are doing their own tasks and processes and they do not speak to the planning team and so on. I know with the 7 Stars, you guys have very special teams. You have a social team, you have AV team, and so on. So I guess for one client, they will touch multiple of those different teams. How important is it that you communicate with these other departments, like the social team and stuff, when you are perhaps, let's say you're generating that AV report using AI? Do you feel like the social team have to be aware of that? How important do you feel like that communication is?
No, for something like that, it's entirely separate. We sort of work through the planning teams. They will coordinate and liaise with clients on most aspects. So day to day, the social team's not going to be that in the know for what I'm doing. But it's important for them to be aware of how things are being done, because ultimately we're looking to give, usually some sort of single document to the client, and we're going to follow the same sort of pathways to get to an end result. So it's good to be aware of each other, but we don't have to. We don't have to be experts.
Yeah, but I do like that it is more accessible. So, what I think, particularly our social team, it might be a very technical role, but in terms of, or in the example you've got with AV, what might have been quite difficult for someone to go into a platform, find that information, find the right information within that data or the insights, then take an action, that can be cut down and be done a lot quicker, a lot easier from somebody that maybe doesn't have an AV background. Maybe there's somebody who just wants to dip in and just say, actually, can I get this? Can I get some recommendations based on this data, and not necessarily be from a specialist background?
Yeah, actually, it's actually got me quite excited about thinking about something. Is a lot of the companies we see as well, they're trying to, when they're building these AI workflows, they're trying to get their seniors to help build these AI workflows. So if let's say, for example, we got an AI workflow that's generating a media plan, it's been built by the senior planners in that team, so then juniors have access to that senior level knowledge. Do you guys feel like you've been able to take advantage of that at the moment? I guess maybe, Drew, it's very much in your team with AV, so you might not be exposed to that. But I guess for new joiners coming in, do you feel like there might be like a less of getting them up to speed because now they have this AI workflow? Or Tyler, I know you guys have some quite senior members and some juniors coming in. So do you feel like there's some type of value there or an advantage to having these AI workflows that are built with senior knowledge?
Something that I think will become quite important within the media industry in general is the sort of knowledge, data, experience that everybody has accumulated over the years, and how do you centralize that? How do you bring that into the tool to make sure that we're not losing any of that when you are using AI. So I think you can bring it in early and have that come in from the top. We work in the hardest area in terms of governance and privacy is the kid space. So we've got a lot of experience and a lot of data and a lot of insights and reports that are in that area. It's a protected space, and therefore, you can't just go out and go onto the internet and get lots of insights on that. But we do have a lot of information there. So being able to bring that into the platforms and have people who have been in the industry maybe a couple of months and still be able to go in and ask and find out that information and know what to do and how to handle that and give good quality insights and actions off the back of it.
Specifically from an AV perspective, actually, I say we approach it quite differently, because we're still in very much in our early stages of implementing a lot of forms of automation and AI. So it would never be our prerogative to start teaching automation and AI from the offset, because we'd want any new starter to know the absolute fundamentals of TV and how it
100%.
works. And if they're not able to go and QA and check using old systems, the legacy systems, then we can't be sure of the output that we're producing.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the media fundamentals is something we absolutely don't want to lose, and it is something that we teach at the very beginning. But I think alongside that, that's where we're sort of bringing in AI, and I think being able to showcase these systems, as I said, working in a completely different way. So you need to almost know how to go into those platforms and still manually make those changes and review everything there. But it's probably a little bit less hands-on, particularly as this evolves. For example, if at the moment, we can maybe download the data from platforms or talk to it using the APIs, it might get to a point where actually they maybe don't need to go into the platforms, because you can say, can you do this? And the action can be taken from a centralized platform, but there will still need to be an element of QA and checks to make sure that is still working.
100%. And do you guys have any fear about people getting lazy with the fundamentals? Because
I think there's been lots of research recently about how people that are using it are maybe losing a little bit of that critical thinking, relying on these tools a little bit more, which is why I don't think we necessarily want it to take away from those areas. Where we're trying to automate at the moment is all around workflows and admin and processes where people aren't really using their brain or engaging anyway, and we still want to keep the creativity and the strategy and the sort of big thinking outside of those.
Yeah, I think you're sort of spot on with the critical thinking thing. I'd certainly, where I see the most misuse of AI would be in most writing tasks.
Okay.
I think so. Obviously, we're looking at a lot of automation today, but we can also be using this for things like spot times and stuff. And sometimes you can have a bot that will help you produce a spot time response, an email to send to the client. And if you continuously put the same prompts in over and over, you get this circularity which produces something which is evidently AI, and that's where the real sort of issue comes. That's where we need to have the human aspect, making sure it's consistent, but looking like we're putting in the effort that we are.
Yeah, I think there's also a risk of being led down the garden path, where actually at the end of your prompts, at the end of the sort of output you get from a lot of these engines at the moment, it will then suggest a next step for you.
Yeah.
I think if you follow that, you'll fall into that same kind of loop of doing what everybody else is doing. And actually, it's how do you make sure that we are still thinking and coming up with our own ideas.
For sure.
Yeah, considering AI as a tool that supports you rather than leads you is pretty key.
Yeah, like for sure. Like at Capably, we're trying to get rid of the boring tasks so people can get back to the high quality tasks and do that thinking. But I guess, there can definitely be an element of where if someone hasn't got that background, that experience, then if they get all this tech to them, then it could be, I guess, like we said, that not that laziness, but that aspect of where they reliant or they're too dependent on the platform of the AI. Or something we like to do as we get near the end of the podcast, this has been super valuable. We like to do a rapid fire question where it's just, I'm going to throw a question at you guys, one sentence, just honest opinion, and then we'll move on to Drew. So maybe we'll go to Tyler and Drew just to wrap it up. Biggest myth about AI in media agencies, Tyler?
I think that it won't eventually be able to do a lot of what we do already.
So it's a magic wand, not a mirror, and it will only reflect how good your data and processes already are.
One action agencies should take this quarter, I know we're at the end of the quarter, but maybe next quarter, that will improve AI automation.
Yeah, I think it comes back to adoption. I think you really just need to bring people on the journey, and you need to bring the end users in as early as possible.
Fantastic, Drew.
So you should pick one margin impacting workflow and try to tackle that first as a test, and then look to scale out new products afterwards.
All right, last one. One complex workflow in media companies that will surely be automated end to end by the end of this year.
I think that's a very tough one.
Very tough.
So I would say that from a reporting aspect, it's not going to happen within a year, but I see no reason why there should be supplier platforms that provide their own information, and most companies should not have some sort of API that's automatically ingesting that into your own internal system.
I think it's an incredibly complex question. I think what we discussed throughout this is how every agency and every client is working in completely different ways. I think the sort of fundamentals of what we do in terms of planning, buying, activating, optimizing, reporting, there's elements throughout all of those that will be automated, but they'll likely be done in different ways by different people.
Yeah, I can totally see that. For me, I always see the first task that tends to be, whether it's competitive reporting, campaign reporting, it always tends to be some type of reporting. But I totally agree with you that everyone's moving at their own stage, and some workflows and competitive reporting tasks for the 7 stars might be much simpler to automate than Generation Minute, or vice versa.
It's also the appetite of clients. So 7 stars, I mean, they might do a lot more in the AV space, and their clients might want to get a lot more information from that area of the business. So I think that's why it's hard to kind of look at it blanket across the agencies.
Before we wrap up, the overall, it's a positive feeling with AI entering the media space.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I absolutely love every time we introduce a new workflow that has been automated, seeing those end users as they've kind of been on that journey, and they get to the point where they're using it every day, but they really do see the value in it, and you can see that actually they enjoy using those systems and tools. And then, as I said, it also frees up their time to focus on the areas that they do enjoy outside of the sort of admin side of it.
Yeah, when you get to hear someone say, "Oh God, you don't know how long that used to take us 2 years ago," and now we can just get it done like that.
I know, it's amazing feeling as well. When we see our customers to say, "Oh, that used to take 8 hours. Now I'm doing this report in 15 minutes." So, what would you say as a last sentence for any media companies that aren't looking into implementing AI into their workspace?
Yeah, I think do it sooner rather than later. I think the AI space is advancing quite quickly, and therefore it's easy to kind of get trapped in this cycle of going, actually, I don't want to do this because there's something else that's come along. So I think do it quickly, get people involved as quickly as possible, start thinking of things from an input, context, output point of view. What is it that you want to be doing, and make sure you're tying it to business outcomes.
I'd say it's a very competitive landscape, the media, and you shouldn't give yourself the option to fall behind.
Yeah, I do think it is a competitive edge as well, particularly as you personalize these workflows to your agencies and your clients.
That's what we're trying to do at Capably as well. We're trying to make sure that if there's a competitive reporting workflow that's giving you guys more efficiency gains, or an AV report, that it's still the 7 stars AV report, and it's still Generation Media report. It's not everyone's going to be generating the same report just because they're using AI. It has the context of your company, your tone of voice, and so on. Thank you, guys. It's been a great conversation. It's always great to hear hands-on experience, so we really appreciate you coming down. If you guys want to find out more about scaling AI in the media, you can download our white paper. It's called The State of AI Automation in the Media and Advertising Industry 2026. Thank you for listening to the Capably podcast. We will see you in the next one.